and we are on 45b Mem Hey Amid Base, about 12 lines from the bottom in the middle. Tanu Rabbana. Brisa taught Hapasha Ifsha v'Nifsal Melechel Lo Adam, bread that had become moldy and inedible to humans. But a dog is able to eat it. So then it still retains its status as food, and so it will still be susceptible and it cause tumah of food b'kabetza, and cause something else tummy to become tummy in the size of an an egg size. And you're allowed to, since it's not edible, you're allowed to burn it on Pesach together with something that's already tummy, because since it's not edible to people, it would not be prohibited to cause it tumah in its burning. And Rabbi Nassan says no, that you're not allowed to burn it together, not allowed to have it cause it to become tummy in the burning process. So whose opinion is this Mishnah that we said? Klal amru b'taharas kol amiyuchid la'oichel adam atama av sheyifsam melechol lekelev. That anything by taharas, by becoming pure, anything that is typically, or it's made for human consumption, it's made as human food, it'll retain its status as a tamei item until such time that even a dog will not eat it. It will be pasul me'achilas kelev, that even a dog will not eat it. Come on, the like Rabbi Nassan, seemingly not like Rabbi Nassan. The retention of its status as food is going to be based on it becoming not edible to dogs. Tana Rabbana. So in our case, we learn in our Mishnah, Rebasa Avdanin, we talk about dough or a chametz nuksha, chametz that is not really ever made as food. But it is not used for. It has a different use, not food use. So arevas avdanin, a barrel or a tub of the solution that would be used for tanning, for working leather. And they would put in flour into it. So if you put in flour into this, within 3 days, you have to get rid of it. So within 3 days of Pesach, so you have to get rid of it, because by the time Pesach comes, it's not going to be it's not going to be destroyed yet. However, if it's more than 3 days prior to Pesach, when you made this solution for the leather, for the tanning of the hides, then by the time Pesach comes, it's no longer really it's already ruined as food, and therefore you don't have to remove it. Amar Rabbi Nassim, so Rabbi Nassim says that's true. However, that's only if you didn't put any leathers in yet. You made the solution, but you didn't actually put hides into it in order to turn it into leather. But once you put the hides in, even if you made the solution within 3 days of Pesach, so it may still have been, if left alone, still be an okay edible thing. You're not obligated to remove it, because as soon as you put the hides in, they already ruin everything in there, and it's not edible. It won't count as something that you have to be worried about for Pesach. Amar Rava, so Rava said, Halacha Rabbi Nassan, afilu yom echad, afilu shachas. The halacha is like what Rabbi Nassan said, that once you put in hides, it no longer is, it counts as chametz, even though it has flour and water in there. It doesn't count as chametz anymore because it's all ruined as far as it being food. I mean, it could still be a great solution for the processing of hides, but the hide in there will make the chametz non-edible and non-usable for anything other than the processing of leather, and therefore it is batal. The chametz in there is nullified, or at least nullified as chametz. It's a solution and is permissible to be kept. This is true for many non-edible processes where you have flour in there, or you have chametz in there, where you don't have to get rid of it. Whether you can benefit from it on Yom Tov is another question, but you cannot, whether you should use it or not. But there's no chametz in something that has been ruined in this manner. So you've made soap out of flour or stuff like that. That's not going to be chametz. So we see even in chametz nuksha, even something that is a hardened chametz, meaning it's not made for eating, but it does have chametz in it. Once it gets ruined from being edible, it is not chametz. The Mishnah then said that this idea that we saw previously, that if you had a dough that you made sort of as a patch for to fill in a crack in a vessel, that we had three measures that we saw yesterday. We had even an olive size. If it's in the bottom of the pot, which is made to contain the contents, then it's nullified to the pot. If it's in the lower part of the side, so that only if it is less than an olive size, and in the upper part, even if it's an olive size, it will not be nullified to the pot. And the Mishnah said, "V'chein le'inyan tuma," and so too in regards to tuma. Im makpid alav chotzitz. If you don't want it to be there, so then it's a barrier to the mikvah. And if you do want it to be there as a part of the pot, so then then it's a part of the pot. Now the Gemara is going to challenge and say that we don't understand the meaning of this Mishnah, because first you tell me a measure, and then you tell me an intent. In regards to chametz, we said it's based on a measure, an olive size, more than olive size, less than an olive size, where in the pot it is, whether it's part of the content, it contains the content or not. And now you tell me that it's based upon whether or not you want it there or you don't want it there. And so that seems not to be the same. But in the Mishnah it said v'chein le'inyan tuma, and so too in regards to tuma. So midami, are they really similar? Hasam b'shiyura tali milsa, hacha b'kpeda tali milsa. In regards to chametz, you told us that it's based upon the shear, the measure, and meaning how much you have. Do you have an olive size, less than olive size, where it is on the pot? And hacha b'kpeda tali milsa, and here it's based upon whether you want it there or not. Amar Rav Yehuda, Ema ule'inyan tuma einakim. So Rav Yehuda suggests maybe the text in the Mishnah is wrong, and that you have to say not so too in regards to tuma, but in regards to tuma it's not so, because it's based on intent, whether you want it there or not, and not based on measure. That's nice, but that's not what the Mishnah text says. It says v'chein le'inyan tuma, and so too in regards to tuma. Elam Abaya, so rather Abaya offers another explanation. This is what it means in the Mishnah. V'chein le'inyan siruf tuma, in regards to combining to the measure of tuma b'Pesach. On Pesach it'll count as a combination based on whether it counts as chametz. If for chametz you were allowed to keep it there, So then it'll also be part of the vessel in regards to Tumah, but only on Pesach itself. And now we're on Mem Vav Amid Aleph 46 at the top. However, b'shayim hashana, but in the rest of the days of the year, ikaplugta. So then it'll depend on whether you want it there or not. So basically, Pesach is going to change the halacha in regards to this, since in regards to chametz, you have to remove some of it. So then it would not count as based on whether you want it there or not, because you have to remove it for Pesach. And if you're allowed to keep it there for Pesach, so then for Pesach, this counts as a part of the vessel. But once Pesach is over, so then it will be based upon whether you want it there or not. If there's less than a kibetza, an olive size, an egg size, and you have inside your inside the vessel, you have less than an egg size, and as we've seen in regards to tumah of food, at least in order to make something else tummy, which is Rashi's opinion, or maybe even to become tummy, that's his opinion, it needs an egg size, and you have less than an egg, but combined with the chametz that you have to remove from inside the container. So since for Pesach you have to remove it, so then it will combine and count as food to bring it to a full kibetza size. Because of the prohibition on Pesach, it's going to count it as food, and it's going to combine with the contents of the food to equal a kibetza size. Over the rest of the days of the year, that it's based upon based upon whether you want it in there or not. So if you want it to remain a part of the vessel, it's going to be a part of the vessel. You don't want it to remain a part of the vessel, it's not going to be a part of the vessel, and then it'll join, and then it'll combine. In makbid olav mitzdarif. If you want it not to be a part of the vessel, it'll combine with the content of the food that you have there to equal an egg size and cause tumah. However, you want it to remain a part of the vessel, hareyu kareva, then it remains a part of the vessel and not as food, and does not combine with the food, the content in the vessel. So basically what Abai is saying is, we know the halacha is that in order for food to cause tumah to other food, it would have to have at least an egg size, a kibetza. If you have less than a kibetza of food, of dough, but you have this chametz, that's the patch, the filler in your vessel, can you use that to combine with the actual food to equal an egg size? So it'll depend. If it's on Pesach and therefore you have to remove it from in there, from inside the vessel, from the filler in the crack of the vessel. So then, since you have to remove it, it's going to combine with the actual food to equal the minimum size of causing tumah of the kibetza. However, if it's the rest of the year, it'll be based upon whether your intent is to keep it there or you want it removed and scraped out from that crack. Maskif la Rava. So Rava says, okay, the halacha could make sense, but it still doesn't fit the text of the Mishnah. Mik tani mitztarif. Does our Mishnah say, and so too in regards to tumah, it'll combine? Hachaitzitz katani. It says that it'll be a barrier, meaning seemingly to a mikvah. So it still doesn't fit the text of the Mishnah. Elam Rava. So rather, Rava says, you know what our Mishnah means? V'chein laha'alis tahara la'areva. So too, in bringing tahara, bringing it back from tumah to this vessel, and it's based on the measure of Pesach, and if on Pesach this is going to be something that you have to remove because it's chametz on Pesach and you can't keep it in the vessel, so then it's going to be a barrier to the mikvah. So too on Pesach, it's going to you're going to have to remove it, since you have to remove it for chametz. So then also for taking it to the mikvah, it would be an issue. So on the bottom part, where on Pesach you're allowed to keep it, even if it's larger than a kazayas olive size. So then you can leave it there. On the side where larger than a kazayas has to be removed, so too in regards to taking it to the mikveh and bringing it back from tuma, it's also going to have the same that same rule that since you're not allowed to keep it there, you have to remove the chametz. So the prohibition of chametz makes it such that even though you may want it to be there, but you're not allowed to keep it there. So then it's going to be a barrier to the mikveh. So what's the case? The vessel itself became tamei, something tamei touched it. And now you want to take it to the mikveh on Pesach. The isurai, where the prohibition of keeping the chametz in the of that larger than an olive size in the lower part of the wall, or even less than an olive size in the upper part of the wall, since you have to remove it in regards to chametz, so chashav chaitzitz, so then it's going to be a barrier between the mikveh and the vessel. And the mikveh would not work for it. The toveling it would not work for it. However, b'shayim hashana, but the rest of the year, if you want to keep it there, it will not be a barrier. And if you don't want to keep it there, even if it's in the part that's containing the food, it'll be a barrier. So it'll be based on whether you want to keep it there or not and your intent. That's if you want it there, it's going to. If you don't want it there, it's going to be a chatzitza, a barrier. And if you want it to remain there, then it is like the vessel itself. Maskefla Rav Papa. So Rav Papa challenged and said, okay, the halacha still makes sense, Rava, but it's still not the exact wording of the Mishnah. Does it say in regards to becoming tahor, coming back from tuma? It says in regards to tuma, and he understands that to mean not the general concept of tuma, but the process of becoming tummy. Rav Papa said he understands the Mishnah to mean this. So too in regards to causing tuma to the vessel. If the source of tuma, say the rodent, touches the spot of the patch, of the filler in the vessel. So the isura chashav chaitzitz, if it touched the chametz part, which has to be removed. So since in regards to Pesach, it has to be removed, it's not a part of the vessel. If it's not a part of the vessel never became tamei when the sheretz touched that spot of the less than kazayas patch in the upper side of the wall, or larger than kazayas filler and patch in the lower part of the wall. Since in regards to Pesach, you have to remove it. That means it's not a part of the vessel. And so the sheretz, the source of tumah, never touched the vessel. It touched something else. And so it's going to be a barrier between the tumah and the vessel. However, in the rest of the year, that it's based upon your intent, whether you want to keep it there or not. If you want to keep the chametz source there, meaning this patch, if you want to not keep it there, it bothers you and you want to remove it, so then it's going to be a barrier, and when the sheretz touches it, it doesn't bring tumah to the vessel. However, if you want this patch to remain as a filler in the crack in the vessel, it's a part of the vessel. It's a part of the vessel, and when the source of tumah, the sheretz, touched that filler, that patch, it's going to cause tumah to the rest of the vessel because it is a part of the vessel. So we have a few interpretations here. This last one says that on Pesach versus the rest of the year, it's going to define whether it's a part of the vessel in regards to the source of tumah touching it and bringing tumah onto the vessel. On Pesach, it's going to depend on the halachas of Pesach whether it's a part of the vessel, and the rest of the year it's going to go by your intent. Rava says in regards to removing the tumah and taking it to the mikveh, on Pesach, if whatever the halachas of Pesach tell us is a part of the vessel, is going to be a part of the vessel, and the rest of the year it's going to go by your intent. And the Abaye said it's in regards to combining the patch and the food inside in order to get a minimum of an egg size, which can then cause tumah to something else, is also, we're going to say, if in regards to Pesach, this has to be removed so it's a part of the food and it can combine. And if the rest of the year, it's going to be whether you want to keep it there or not, whether it's going to be considered food or vessel, and then whether it'll combine. The next Mishnah talks about if we don't know whether a dough had become chametz or not. It's not showing the signs. So how long do you wait and before you say that it became chametz? So batzek acherish. So a dough that's silent, that doesn't speak to us, it's a mute, meaning it's not showing the signs of becoming chametz. If you have another piece of dough, so you made a dough, you cut it into sections. 3 of the sections seem to be rising and becoming chametz, and 1 doesn't. So you're going to measure and say, look, if the other ones became chametz, this one became chametz as well. The Gemara says that's great, but what happens if you don't have another dough to match it with or compare it to? Amar Rabbi Abo, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, and Neighbor Shlakish, Kadei sheyelach adam migdal nunya l'Tveria mil. As if the time has elapsed enough that a person can walk from Migdal Nunya, the Tower of Nunya, to Tiberias, mil, which is 1 mil, which is approximately a half a mile for us. That is the amount of time that once it's elapsed, you know it's chametz. V'name a mil, so just tell us, as long as it takes to walk a mil. Because it wants to give you a reference point to know how much is a mil. From the Tower of Nunya to Tveria, that's a mil. Amar Rabbi Abo, Amar Shimon ben Lakish, Legabel, V'letfila, Unatilas Yadayim, Arba Mila. There's a halacha that you have to go and seek your resource for up to 4 mil, approximately 2 miles ahead in your journey, in order to fulfill something that's necessary in these 3 instances. In regards to kneading dough, if you are hired or asked to knead a dough for someone else, and they provide you a vessel, but the vessel is tamei, and there's a mikvah within 4 mil, so you have to go to the mikvah and tovel the vessel. That's going to be included in the process because you don't want to create a tamei bread. And your friend would then, in this commission of making this dough, would have included that you would go and tovel the vessel, bring it to a mikveh to bring it back to tahara process. And so too in regards to davening. If you are traveling and you have basically you need to rest, you need to whether it's the end of the day or you need to rest, but there's a shul within 4 mil ahead, so you have to continue on to the shul so that you can daven with a minyan rather than rest where you are and rest there so that you can make minyan. And also for washing your hands for bread, that if there is a source of water within 4 mil in the direction you're going to have to wait and not eat where you are, go forward to where you can wash your hands and then eat over there. Amar Menachem Yitzchak, Evo Amra v'Arba Amar. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak said, actually, this statement was said in the name of Evu, and in fact, he said so, but he said there are 4 things, not only 3. Arba Amar v'Chadaminayu Ibud. And what's the 4th one? The tanning of hides to make it into leather. The hides will count as food in regards to tumah until such time that it's in the tanning process, at least for 4 mil, the time that it takes to travel 4 mil. That's how long it'll take for the tanning process to destroy the hide from counting as food in regards to tuma, and it'll become a piece of leather rather than a hide, a skin of an animal that is food. The Tanana is learned v'kulon she'ibdon or she'hilar ben kedei avoda tahir, that these hides, once you've put it into the tanning tub to start soaking, or another way they would process it is they would take the hide and put it on the floor and let people step on it, and the walking on it will start softening it and cause the process to begin. So that too, 4 mils worth is going to count. Chutz mi ora adam, besides for soft skin of human skin, bakama kedei avoda, and how long is this process that would then count as that it is no longer hides, that is leather. Amar Evo said, Amar Rabbi Yana, in the name of Rabbi Yana, kedei hilach arba milin, the time it would take to travel 4 mil, about 2 months. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina l'shana el lefanav. These halachas that say that you have to travel to a mikveh, you have to travel to a shul, you have to travel to water 4 mil. These are true if that it's within the direction you're going. That's lefanav, in front of it. Aval acharav, but if it's turning back, even 1 mil you don't have to do. Afil a mil, which is about a half a mile, you don't have to go back. Eina chazeh. Amar Rav Acha, so Rav Acha said, however, from the fact that it said even 1 mil, we know mil hu deina chazeh pachas min mil chazeh, but if it's less than a half a mile, then you would go back for water to wash your hands, to eat, shul to daven with a minyan, and to a mikveh to tovel the vessel. The next Mishnah is going to talk about a peculiar, an issue that comes up, a unique situation that will come up. Somebody's making dough on Pesach. So if you're making matzah on Pesach, so you have to take challah. Challah not being the kneaded bread, is the woven bread that we use for Shabbos, but challah, you have to take off the portion that you give to the kohen. Now, that's good. So you make a dough, you take off the challah, you give it to the kohen, and it's all good. However, the problem is that what happens if it becomes tummy? And the halacha is that if the dough is tummy, when you take the challah is going to be tummy, and you can't give it to the kohen because he can't eat it as tummy anyhow. You can't bake it because since the kohen can't eat it, you're not allowed to bake it, because on Yantif, like Shabbos, you're not allowed to cook, you're not allowed to bake, you're not allowed to make a fire, unless on Yantif there is a leniency. The Torah says that which is going to be eaten on Yantif. So you're allowed to bake this for Yantif itself, but if the kohen can't eat it anyhow, because it's now challah, that's tummy, so he can't bake it either. So what's going to happen? It's going to turn to chametz, and you're going to have chametz on Pesach, and then you can't burn it either because truma tamea kachim that becomes tameh, you can't burn on Yantif. So you're going to end up with chametz in your process, and chametz in your home. So what should you do? So again, you have a regular dough. You could take challah and give it to the kohen, or you can bake it for the kohen, or you can separate it afterwards and give it to the kohen, because you're allowed to bake. You're allowed to bake for the kohen because it's going to be eaten on Pesach. However, in this case, where the kohen is not allowed to eat it, so you can't bake for him on Yantif, and it can't be burnt because you're not allowed to burn the kachim that's tamei on Yantif, and it's going to become chametz. So what do? You have to separate the challah, but you can't give it to anyone, and it's going to turn into chametz, and you can't bake it. So ketzad mafrishin challah betuma b'yantif. How are you going to separate that portion of challah that has to be separated if the dough is tamei on Yantif? So Rabbi Eliezer Omer letikra l'shem ad shetiyafos. So Rabbi Eliezer has an idea. He says, actually, don't separate the challah. Don't separate that portion when it's in dough form. Rather, separate it when it is in bake when it's already baked. Meaning, bake all your matzahs that you're going to bake. Bake your dough, and have it baked for Yontif, and then separate the portion of challah afterwards. And as we'll see, how can you bake it? Because one section here is not actually edible, because you have to take challah, and it's not going to be edible challah because it's tummy. So that the Gemara is going to address. Ben Beseira Omer, however, Ben Beseira says tatil b'tonet. Says no, you're not allowed to bake it. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the dough portion of challah that you separate and you can't give to the kohen, and put it into cold water so that it'll remain cold and not rise, and you keep it in the cold water until the evening comes, at which point you'll be able to destroy it, because that's going to be Matzah Yantav. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua. So Rabbi Yeshua said, and this is, we go to Mem Vavam at base. He says, no, you don't have to worry about any of this. This is not yours. This belongs to the Kohen, and we don't know which Kohen, because you haven't gifted it to a particular Kohen. So it's not yours. It's not any particular Kohen's. And so nobody's transgressing on this for Chametz. The Torah says, Lo yara lecha Chametz. You shouldn't see your own Chametz. This is not your Chametz. So you're not going to transgress Bal Yira Bal Yimatzeh. So therefore, Elam Afrishasa, separate it, and leave it on the side until the sun goes down, until nightfall. And if it became chametz, it became chametz. Now, don't try this trick at home. Most people would not be very comfortable with you leaving some chametz around in their house. A rising dough on Pesach, not a good idea. But this is the idea over here. You have this dough that you made. You want to make matzah. You have to separate challah. You're not, and it's tamei. You're not allowed to give it to the kohen because he can't. You can't. The kohen can't eat it, so you can't bake it for him. You can't burn it because you're not allowed to burn kachim. So what are you going to do? Rabbi Eliezer says, don't separate the challah until it's already baked. And you're allowed to bake it, even though that some of it's going to have to become challah that nobody's going to be able to eat. You're allowed to bake it. And Ben Beseira says, no, you're not allowed to bake it, and you have to contain it in a way that it will not rise. And Rabbi Yeshua says, we don't care if it rises. It's not yours. It's not a particular kohen's. So nobody's going to be over. Nobody's going to transgress chametz. So just let it be and let it become chametz. So what's the basis of the machlokas? So lema b'tovas hanoah k'mipalki. So let's say the basis of the machlokas is, even though that once you've separated the challah belongs to the general kohen world, but it doesn't belong to any one particular kohen, and your rights to the challah is that you get to choose which kohen you're going to gift it to, and this is true with all the gifts of the kohen. You can give it to any kohen you want. That right that you have, that you can gift it to whoever you want, has a monetary value or not? Is there a monetary value to the fact that practically, somebody may gift you a bottle of wine so that you start giving their grandson, their son's, their daughter's son, who is a kohen, all of your gifts for the kohen, right? So that may have a practical dollar amount attached to it, a gift available, or just the value that you have a right to give to whoever you want, and therefore there's something that may come back to you in friendship, etc. That is there a monetary value to the tovas hana, to the pleasure of the gifting to whoever you want, and as such, there is something to it. If somebody takes that away from you, they've taken a monetary value away from you. So this is a machlokas of whether the right to gift is, or to choose who you gift to, is tovas hana, has some monetary value. And halachically, that's going to be a difference, because now we can say that the challah separation belongs to you. It belongs to you in as much as you have a monetary value to it. You have a specific right that has some value within this. So Rabbi Eliezer Sava Tevis Hana Mammon, that it does have a monetary value. So you have a monetary ownership of this chametz, and so you can't just leave it around, as Rabbi Yeshua says, and therefore it is yours, and you're allowed to bake it on Yantif. And we'll see a little bit more of the explanation of that. Rabbi Yeshua Tzavar Tevis Hana Eina Mammon, and Rabbi Yeshua says no, that it's not monetary value. You don't have an ownership in it, and so you could just leave it and let it become chametz. It's not yours anyhow. So the Gemara says no, that's not the basis. Everybody agrees there's no monetary value. You don't have ownership on this on account of the rights that you can give it away to someone. So rather, the machlokes is based on something we say hoyel. If you have a particular ability to change the status of something, you didn't use it per se, but you have that ability. Is that enough to allow particular halachas on Shabbos and Yantif and in other places in regards to kachim and tumah? Here, the halacha is that whenever you pronounce chala, that is a verbal pronouncement that creates a halachic status. It's like an oath, and therefore you can actually renege and have it annulled. So if you pronounce something teruma or chala, and then you say, you know what, that's not the part I want to give. I want to give that section or something else, a better or worse, whatever it may be. You can actually have that annulled and repronounce it. So the challah, even after you've separated the challah, you cannot tell me I can't bake it because, look, it's challah, that's tummy. The Kohen can't eat it, you can't eat it, so you can't bake it on Yantif. Well, I actually can. I can bake it on Yantif because I can annul my statement on this piece that it's challah, and then bake it so that I can eat it, and I'll give the Kohen a different piece. I'll separate a different piece for challah. So every single one of the pieces, I can essentially, I have the right to annul and renege on my statement that this is the challah, and have it annulled, and then pronounce a different piece. So therefore, since hoyel, I am able to pull back and change the challah status, I'm allowed to bake it. And therefore, Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that even if you pronounced it as challah, you're allowed to bake it, because I could end up eating this. However, he says it's best to only pronounce it later. The Rabbi Eliezer Sava Amrin and Hoyel. If he wants, he could he could have it annulled, the pronouncement of challah, and it'll become his. He's allowed to bake it. It's his own thing. And it's transgression of chametz as well. However, Rabbi Yeshua Sava Amrin and Hoyel, we don't say this concept of if you would, then you could, and because you didn't. Right now, it's challah, and so it's not yours, and you're not allowed to bake it. You're not going to transgress, and you're not going to be allowed to bake it. Somebody have a question? Or somebody?
I had a question, but it's back on Tovas Hana. I remember in Kiddushin that you could be Mekadesh a woman with Tovas Hana, with Truma, even though she's not a Kohen, she can't do anything with it because of Tovas Hana. That she is why did the Gemara just bat down the Tovas Hana is not mammon if we can be Mekadesh?
Tovas Hana is a machlokas, whether it counts as, and the Gemara is trying to see whether we have to say that these opinions hold like that, or can we understand it differently? That's a machlokas of whether or not Tovas Hana mammon, and the Gemara always looks to see whether or not that is the basis of the machlokas. So we have a statement that says, when you bake on Yantif for a weekday, are you allowed to do that? Can I bake on Yantif, and I'm not going to eat it today, I'm going to eat it tomorrow or the next day? So Rav Chisda says you transgress a Torah prohibition of cooking on Yantif. You're not allowed to cook on Yantif. Even though we do cook on Yantif, but you're not allowed to, just like you're not allowed to on Shabbos. The leniency of Yantif is only if you're going to eat it that day, but if you're going to cook it for the next day, you transgress. However, Rabbi says you did not transgress, you don't get a malchus. Why? Rav Chisda says you're not allowed to bake or cook because we don't say if if something would happen, you would be able to eat it today. Therefore, it counts as if you're baking for today. And we don't say if guests just happen to show up this afternoon. So, I don't have food for them. Actually, I do. I just baked for tomorrow. And so I can give them what I made for tomorrow. I can give it to them today. And so in case guests show up, I have what to serve them. Therefore, I'm allowed to make food today with the intent of using it tomorrow. Chazile, so it's usable. And Rabbi Amar Eina like Rabbi Amrin and Hoyle. And Rabbi says, no, we do say Hoyle, that the permission of baking on Shabbos, on Yontif, of Shabbos you can't bake and cook. But if the halachic permission to bake on Yontif is such that it doesn't have to be you actually know that you can use it, but rather if it's possible, something could happen, something could make it usable, that's going to be enough. Amalei Rabbi Rav Chisda, so Rabbi said to Rav Chisda, Lididcha, according to you, what's the basis that Amris Lemrin and Hoyle, if you don't say that in case guests come, I'm allowed to bake today, how can we bake on Yontif for Shabbos? And the halacha is that we bake on Yontif in preparation for Shabbos with the concept of Eruv Tafshilin. Eruv Tafshilin is that I before Yontif start cooking for Shabbos already. I make a cooked food and a baked food, and I say, with this cooked and baked food, this is my Eruv. I've already started my food for Shabbos, and then I can continue the cooking for Shabbos on Yontif itself. Now, if there's a Torah prohibition, if you are right, Rav Chisda, that there's a Torah prohibition of cooking on Yontif, what does it help to have started the cooking before Yontif with some Eruv? The Torah doesn't allow you to cook from Yontif to Shabbos. Must be that the reason is that really I'm allowed to cook on Yontif for Shabbos on account of that I may need the food. Guests may show up. Somebody may be hungry. I need the food, and therefore I'm allowed to cook on Erev Yontif, Erev Shabbos on Yontif Friday for Shabbos, because just in case guests come, I'll have I have what to serve them, or just in case the kids are hungry, I'll have what to serve them. But according to you, that you say that there is no such concept of Hoyle. So how does it work? Amalei Mishum Erev Tafshil. So he said, because of the Erev you made on Friday before Yontif, because of the beginning of cooking for Shabbos that you already did. So Rabbi responds to Rav Chisda, that's great if on a Torah level you're allowed and it's a rabbinic prohibition. So the rabbinic prohibition can be answered with an Eruv. But a Torah prohibition of cooking on Yontif for Shabbos is going to be permitted on account of an Eruv. It says actually, on a Torah level, mid'oraisa, it's true you're not allowed to cook on Yontif for a lesser day, for a weekday, or maybe even for another Yontif day, but to cook for Shabbos, for the next day, which is Shabbos, you're allowed to on Yontif because Shabbos is a greater kedusha, it's a greater holiness. And therefore, on a Torah level, you're allowed to. V'Rabbanan hu de gazru bei. And the Rabbanan said no. If you're going to cook from a Yontif to a Shabbos, people are going to think you can cook from Yontif to a weekday. And that's going to be a problem. That is a Torah prohibition. So the Chachamim said, don't cook from Yontif to Shabbos unless you make an Eruv. This way you'll know, for Shabbos I'm allowed to because I already made an Eruv. And that's the way an Eruv Tafshilim works, according to Rav Chisda. Now, the kivin it's a Rabbanan Eruv, since the Chachamim said you make an Eruv Tafshilin Islay Hakera. That's how he's going to remember. So the basis of an Eruv Tafshilin is a machlokas here. Rabbah says the basis is in case guests come, you will have the food, and so therefore really you're allowed to cook on Yontif for that day because maybe guests will come. And since you have the maybe, then you can also cook for Shabbos because maybe you're going to end up serving it to someone today. And Rav Chisda says, no, it's because really on a Torah level, you're allowed to cook from Yontif to Shabbos because Shabbos is a greater Kedusha. However, since people may confuse it with a weekday, they said make an Eruv and make this food before Yontif, and you already started cooking for Shabbos, and that will